All right, thanks for joining me. My name is Kira Werstein, and I'm excited to share about the topic, how to inspire exercise or physical activity in your children. First, I just want to start by sharing a little bit about myself and my background to set the stage for the talk today. I am an exercise psychologist and teaching professor at Iowa State University, and I also have a strong soccer background, so I started playing lots of sports and soccer as a young child and went on to play soccer in college. I had a goal to play soccer professionally. I was invited to some tryouts and then didn't make a team. So with that news, I had to then struggle and think through what my career goals would be. With that transition, I also found myself really struggling to be motivated to exercise. That was really surprising to me. I'd always been very motivated to train for soccer and then found myself less motivated. And so with that puzzling experience that I had, I decided to go on to grad school to major in, get a master's and PhD in exercise and sports psychology. Through my education, I did learn how to fuel my exercise motivation tank, and now I am passionate about taking research in exercise and psychology and translating that information into practical strategies that help others to make exercise a regular part of their lifestyle as well. A little bit more about me personally. My husband and I have 3 kids. They are 4, 6, and 7. And my husband and I are also soccer parent coaches for our kids' soccer teams. So I'm also a soccer mom. So I've gotten to put these strategies into practice as well in my personal life. So next thing we'll do is take a look at some of the consequences of physical inactivity and then the benefits of physical activity as well. So I just want to start by commending you as a parent for signing your child up to play soccer or any sport. What we see is with physical inactivity in children, we see a lot of negative consequences. So increased risk for lots of different types of disease: hypertension, cardiovascular disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes. They have increased risk for mental health concerns, depression, anxiety. It affects the immune system. So the inverse is children who are physically active, whether it's playing soccer or exercising in other related sports, have a better immune system. They have greater resistance and less risk for different types of disease, chronic disease as well, and enhanced mood. So decreased risk for depression and anxiety, and higher feelings of vitality and just a better general overall mood. So in order to get all of those benefits of physical activity and exercise, how much activity does your child need to do, you might be asking? Likely participating in soccer is something that certainly is going to help them achieve all of those benefits. So what the current guidelines for children is that they should achieve 60 minutes of aerobic physical activity each day, and at least 3 of those days they should be doing vigorous activity. So that's exercise that increases their heart rate, they're breathing harder, things like playing soccer. Additionally, at least 3 days of the week, they should also be doing muscle strengthening activities. Likely they're doing this at soccer as well. So this could be things like push-ups and sit-ups and squats. They don't have to necessarily be in the weight room lifting weights. They could be playing on a playground. They can be lifting weights. It is safe for children to do resistance training regimen if their technique is sound. And then additionally, it's also important for them at least 3 of the days to do bone strengthening exercises, which soccer qualifies as that type of activity. It's got to be, in order to strengthen bones most effectively, it's got to be weight-bearing activity, weight-bearing exercise. So non-weight-bearing exercise include things like riding a bike and swimming. And those are great for cardiovascular health, but they don't strengthen bones to the same degree. So if we want our child to gain all of those great benefits from exercise, physical activity, what is a parent to do? What we're going to do in the next few minutes is go over some practical steps that parents can do to help increase the likelihood that their kids are going to want to exercise, whether it be at home or that they're going to want to go to practice and continue to be physically active. And then we'll also talk about some things that we want to avoid doing as parents. There's a saying that goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And so the first thing we have to do is take a step back and say, I can't make my child exercise or want to exercise. And if we get to this point where we are really trying to control and really trying to push, we might be actually hurting their motivation. So more to come on that. So to start, we all know that the way a parent thinks about and then talks about any particular topic influences their child and how they learn about that particular topic. Exercise is no different. So what we're going to do next is take a step back and think about, as a parent, what is my exercise paradigm? How do I think about exercise? What lens, if you will, do I see exercise through? Is exercise something that is just this necessary evil that we have to do to achieve a desired outcome? Or maybe we see exercise through a different lens. Maybe exercise is something that we actually enjoy. We look forward to. We enjoy doing it most of the time. So those are two very different lenses. And I will say that the former is a lot more closely related to our cultural exercise paradigm. A lot of people will say things like, oh, I hate running. Running's a punishment. I don't run unless I'm being chased. Ha ha ha. And when people say that, they're joking, but they're not. They are trying to say they don't like exercise. They don't like running. And so what we're going to do is take several steps back from that and ask and start to kind of answer the question today, how did a person get to that place where they feel and experience exercise in that way? And what's more important is, how do we rewrite that script for our children so that they can enjoy exercise and not experience it as something that's terribly awful? So I'm going to start with a story from 200 years ago of a man named William Cubitt, who was an inventor, and he noticed that prisoners in jail appeared to be very wasteful with their time, just kind of idling the time away. And he thought that they could be more productive with their time. And so he invented what we now call, and what was called then, the very first treadmill. And this is a picture of that treadmill. So prisoners were forced to walk on this treadmill and grind flour as a part of their punishment. While they were grinding flour, they would often be beaten, flogged, and worked to exhaustion. And so, interestingly, this very first treadmill looks a lot like our modern day gym. And so this association with running, physical manual labor, and punishment has been perpetuated. And it continues now still today. I wonder if any of you throughout your childhood, maybe it was in physical education, or maybe it was in sport, soccer, football, any sport that you played in, I wonder if you experienced exercise as a punishment from your coach or your PE teacher. I certainly did. Oftentimes I would get in trouble pretty often. And so it would be run a lap or 10 push-ups. And certainly I'm not trying to say that a coach or a PE teacher who has used exercise as punishment is a bad coach or a bad teacher. But what they are doing with that practice is perpetuating the association that exercise is a punishment. And so what we can do is, for our children today, reframe how exercise is experienced and viewed, okay? And so how can we do that? In addition to never using exercise as a punishment as a parent, a teacher, or a coach, of course, we want to avoid that and use other means of behavior modification and behavior regulation. Another thing that we can do is to help children identify those physiologic cues that they experience during exercise as something that's positive and have positive associations with that. Because what happens is we are trained from a very young age that those physiologic cues of exertion, when we start exercising, our heart rate increases, we start to sweat, we feel muscular fatigue. A lot of times people say, oh, my legs are burning or my arms are burning. Well, I mean, they're not really burning, but they do feel fatigued. And what we often do is label those things as things that are negative, when actually, as a parent, a coach, and a teacher, what we can do is help our children understand that what our body's doing this is actually a good thing. Our body's undergoing stress. Exercise is a stressor. It's a good stressor. And this principle of an adaptation to this stressor is called the principle of overload. So when we stress our bodies with exercise, our body adapts to that stressor and it becomes stronger. So when, especially very young children, when they start to breathe harder, their heart rate is beating fast, you could bend over, especially really young. I do this with my kids regularly. They'll run a lap, or maybe we'll have a race, and I might put my hand on their heart and feel their heart beating, and we'll say, oh, did you feel your heart beating? Listen. They stop and listen. They feel it. Right? Your heart's getting stronger. You're working hard. Maybe we're riding bikes and they're going up a hill and their legs are feeling really fatigued, working hard going up that hill. And they're like, oh, my legs hurt. And then we identify that. That's your legs working hard. Your muscles are getting stronger because you're working hard right now. So we can take those physiologic cues and communicate them that it's not something that's an awful experience. This is your body becoming stronger. I had a great lived example of this when I worked at an acceleration program about 15 years ago. It was primarily youth athletes that were part of this program, and it was very vigorous. It was demanding. So we did treadmills, sprints, resisted sprints, a lot of different types of plyometrics, and had one athlete that was outside of our normal age. He was in his 70s. His name's Jim. And unlike many of the youth athletes that were in this program, when Jim was sprinting on the treadmill, instead of, a lot of people will say things like, oh, this is killing me. It's not actually killing us. What would Jim say? He's sprinting on the treadmill. He would literally yell, it's making me live. So it was really awesome to see, and his pictures on the slide as well, a lifetime of an exercise makes you strong paradigm, how that transpires into adulthood and even as an older adult. So what are other practical steps that we can do to help grow that motivation in our children to be exercise as a part of their lifestyle? I want us to take a look at a motivation model called the self-determination theory. And this is a scientific theory based on empirical evidence, so data that's collected. And what it shows us is that if we want to have exercise behavior or participation in a particular sport like soccer to be sustained long-term, what's really important is that that person is intrinsically motivated at least some of the time, that they experience exercise as something that's fun, that they find a sense of pride in, and it's something that they really enjoy. And to grow that intrinsic motivation, we can help support those components of motivation as a parent by helping to build competence, helping to support autonomy, and then third, growing a sense of relatedness. So as parents, what we need to be conscientious of is supporting intrinsic types of reasons for exercise and being cautious with extrinsic or external motivators in the environment. So I want to focus on reasons for just another couple minutes, and by giving an example of a way that we can hurt what was first intrinsic motivation to exercise or play soccer with external rewards and reinforcement. So there's a story of an older psychologist who had an empty lot next door to his house. And one day some kids brought a bat and ball and they were going to play baseball next door to his house. He didn't particularly want them there. He didn't want his windows broken, balls coming into his yard. He understood motivation. So what he did the first day that they came was he walked over and gave each one of them a nickel. And he said, hey, you know what? I've decided I'm an older man. I like having kids nearby. Makes me feel young again. So here is a nickel for playing baseball. He came back the next day. Here is a dime for playing baseball. Thanks for coming and playing. He kept raising the stakes day after day. Here's a quarter for playing baseball. Here's $1, etc. And over time, they continued to get this money, which is an external reward. They're not playing necessarily for that enjoyment. So then one day he came over and the kid said, so are you going to pay us? And he said, oh, I wish I could, but I'm on a fixed income and this is getting really expensive for me, guys. So nope, not going to pay you anymore. And what happened was the kids packed up their bat and balls and left. What happened over the course of time was that reason for playing baseball changed from intrinsic. The reason they first came was because they liked playing baseball. They wanted to play. It was fun. And over time, the psychologist, understanding motivation, supported a change to external and an extrinsic form of motivation by reinforcing with money. This is for playing baseball. And then when that external carrot was taken away, they no longer had a reason to continue playing baseball. So we want to be, it's important for us to be cautious with external rewards and the way that we present them. And the reason for this is because, again, we want to support that intrinsic motivation where an athlete or a child is playing a sport, playing soccer or exercise because they enjoy it. It grows their sense of pride and competence in what they're doing. And as you can see on the motivation model, that intrinsic motivation is the strongest form of motivation. It's at the top. And there are other external forms. It doesn't mean these external forms of motivation are bad, but they're not as strong. So in the face of failure or in the face of any type of barrier, a person with an external type of motivation isn't going to be as likely to persist. And so each form is a little less strong on that continuum. So some of these external forms of motivation, some of you might relate to them as well. It could be exercising because it's a part of your identity, or playing soccer because it's a part of who I am, or it could be for other external reasons out of guilt or obligation. Oh, I have to go work out or mom's going to nag me, or my husband or wife if you're an exerciser. Could be to avoid being put on a medication if it's an exercising adult. So again, these external forms of motivation aren't as strong. So what's going to sustain that intrinsic motivation is exercising, is playing soccer because it's fun in and of itself. And just a quote to help reinforce this concept is that anything less than intrinsic motivation is like spray paint on a rusty car. Eventually, it flakes off. A very clear example that's often used by adults is using the motivator of weight loss as the rationale and reason for exercise. And sadly, what's seen in adult populations is that adults with their reason for exercise, the primary reason being for weight loss and body weight regulation, tend to drop out of exercise programs very shortly after they begin, so within a few months. So what we want to remember as parents is that the benefits of exercise extend well beyond body weight regulation. And we want to avoid tying our reason for exercise to body weight regulation, because that is an external motivator. And again, that is not a very strong reason, a reason that endures and supports long-term motivation to exercise. So once again, it's that exercise or playing soccer is the end and not the means to an end. Another factor that is important to consider to help enhance that intrinsic motivation and grow motivation to play soccer and to exercise in your home is to consider the type of motivational climate that you grow in your home. So there's two primary types: a task orientation and an ego orientation. A task goal orientation is motivation and a sense of success when the individual has worked as hard as they can, they've done their best, and they've improved. So this is a self-referenced criteria for success. And ego orientation is one in which a person feels successful when they win, when they are the best. So regardless of whether or not they improve, if they're not the winner, they don't feel successful. Now, it is okay to be competitive and to try to win and have that ego goal orientation. What becomes harmful is when we exclusively have an ego goal orientation. What's important is to also have a task goal orientation. Why? Because if a person exclusively has an ego goal orientation, they feel successful only when they win, they are more likely to drop out because there's only one winner. And if they're not going to be the winner, they're not successful. And so research shows that they will drop out and not try much more frequently than those who have a task orientation. So when we support our children, when they just do their very best and control the controllable, control what they can. They can't control the performance of other people, but they can do their best and they can improve. And when we set up that type of environment in our home and in our conversation with our children, we communicate to them that they can be successful, whether they're first place or if they're in the middle, or whether they're last or not. Doing our very best is what's important. So that's called a task goal orientation. This is something I'm definitely working through with my children personally. One of my children, my son, is very competitive. He's the most competitive out of my three children. So very much like me, even myself. And so I'm also trying to support, my husband and I are trying to grow in him also this task orientation. He's so competitive, he might be even sitting at the table eating breakfast and say, whoever raises their hand first wins. And then if we're playing soccer in the yard, or if we're going to have a bike race, if he notices he doesn't think he's going to win, then he will quit and he might go off and hide behind a tree and cry. And so that's definitely very high in ego orientation. And again, that's okay, as long as we help support and grow in him that it's okay if you're not first place, you do your best. And so that task involved orientation as well. And so one thing that we use to try and help support and grow that in him is the example of Michael Jordan. So I've been pulling up on my phone on YouTube videos of Michael Jordan missing when he dunks the ball. And so there's a reel of him missing probably 10 dunks in a row, one after the next, after the next. And we explained to him, hey, look, this is one of the greatest basketball players of all time. He misses. And in fact, there's a quote by him that says, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. This is a high task goal orientation. He fails and he gets back up and he tries again. And so he's both task and ego oriented. So we want to make sure we're, again, supporting that task involved climate in our home. Next, we'll take a look back at that motivation model. And as you can see on the right-hand side of that model is a continuum of high self-determination at the top, high self-determination where the behavior, exercise, soccer, is determined by the individual. They're going to be higher in intrinsic motivation. And on the lower end of that scale is low in self-determination. Maybe they're participating in soccer to avoid a punishment, or they actually see soccer as a punishment. So we want to support, when we can, autonomy and that sense of control in our children. One way we could support that sense of control and autonomy in our children to grow that intrinsic motivation is to consider the types of rewards and punishments that we do use as parents. So once again, we're remembering that we want to avoid using exercise as a punishment, and also consider using physical activity and exercise as something that we could use as a reward or as a way of celebrating. So it might be that, hey, you've worked really hard on your homework today. Let's go celebrate. Let's go outside and kick the ball back and forth together, or play a game in the backyard. The next factor, as we think back to that motivation model, was growing a sense of relatedness surrounding soccer or surrounding that exercise behavior. So the great thing about soccer is that it's a team sport. And so in and of itself, there can be a sense of relatedness when going to practice. There's a chance to engage with others and see friends. So soccer itself can be the way it's designed as a team sport can be a way that grows that intrinsic motivation. And then the last factor that was a part of that motivation model was competence. So when we can help support growing competence in our children related to soccer, that can grow their motivation to do it. When they feel like, I'm good at this, they're going to be more motivated to do it. It's not very often that a person might say something like, you know, in my free time, I like to do things that I'm not good at. Right? Nobody says that because we're not motivated. It doesn't feel good. It's not fun to do things that we don't feel like we're good at. So when we can make sure that we set our children up for success. So they're playing on a team that's appropriately challenging for them. And then we gradually build that challenge as their skills and their fitness and their strength grows. We want to make sure that we support their growth in their competence by speaking encouragement to them. We want to avoid being critical. And we can do that as parents by leaving the coaching to the coaches. So when our kiddos hop in our car on the way home from practice or on the way home from a game, instead of giving them all of our feedback about the things that they could improve on in the game, what we can do is support them by saying, hey, I had so much fun watching you play. You worked really hard. And I just love watching you play. So speaking encouragement to them is helping to support that sense of competence. And so lastly, just wanted to summarize by kind of recapping each of those major points, which is, as parents, we want to reflect back on what is our exercise paradigm. One in which exercise is one that makes us live, and exercise makes us strong paradigm, and that we're communicating that to our children with our words and our actions. We want to make sure that we're supporting our kids in being a part of soccer and activities that they really enjoy, and that we're speaking encouragement into them to build their competence as well. And lastly, I just wanted to give you encouragement as a parent. If you're the type of parent that is watching a video like this, I'm confident that you are already doing a great job in supporting your kids. And so just want to finish with thanking you so much for being here with me today.